Impeachment is very rare in the United States, nearly 250 years of history, and none of the three men to have faced it, which includes President Bill Clinton, Andrew Johnson, and Donald Trump. To be impeached, a president or other federal official must have committed one of the violations described by the Constitution as treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Impeachment alone isn't the only step to take a president out of office, but is actually the first part of a two-pronged process. To impeach an official, the House of Representatives must pass articles of impeachment, which formally accuse the president of misbehavior. Once the House votes to impeach, the Senate must hold a trial to decide if the president should be removed from office. Well, here is the list of U.S. presidents that were impeached. President Andrew Johnson. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln in April 1865 unexpectedly elevated his vice president, Johnson, an outspoken white supremacist but strong anti-secessionist, to the White House. With the aftershocks of the Civil War manifesting in bloody voter suppression and racially motivated terrorism across the South, Johnson's presidency was immediately thrown into tumult by demands that the new president take steps to cement the war's promise of racial equality. But Johnson vetoed civil rights legislation, unilaterally pardoned hundreds of former Confederate leaders and called for the murder of his political enemies. Johnson was in essence impeached for undermining the cause of racial equality, the historian Brenda Wineapple wrote in her book The Impeachers. But the bulk of the impeachment clauses against him were predicated on a relatively narrow charge of violating a contemporary tenure of office law, by removing his Secretary of War, Edward Stanton, who was instrumental in opposing racist attacks on suffrage for former slaves. Johnson remained in office after being acquitted in the Senate by one vote, a bribed victory, historians have speculated. President Bill Clinton. In January 1998, news broke that Bill Clinton had engaged in an affair with the White House intern, Monica Lewinsky. This story was sensational but also had legal implications. Kenneth Starr's investigation into the Whitewater land was not moving forward, but when evidence of the Lewinsky affair emerged, Starr believed it was a pattern of protection of the president in exchange for employment. Investigators questioned Clinton under oath about his relationship. The testimony, the later efforts by the White House to deal with evidence that bore signs of tampering, and charged of lying under oath, were the basis of Starr's charges of illegal conduct and evidence for Clinton's impeachment. The Senate opened its trial in early 1999. Those against impeachment said Clinton's actions constituted law and tawdry actions involving private matters, not high crimes and misdemeanors amounting to offenses against the state. Those against Clinton said a president who commits perjury and obstructs justice is subverting the rule of law, and that subversion becomes a high crime. The president was acquitted on February 12, 1999. Clinton was acquitted on both counts on February 12, 1999. 45 Republican senators voted to convict while 45 Democrats and 10 Republicans voted for acquittal. On the second article of obstruction of justice, a total of 50 Republicans voted for conviction while 45 Democrats and 5 Republicans voted for acquittal. President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump was impeached on December 18, 2019, on 2 charges: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The 2 charges against the president, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, stem from a July 25 phone call with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. The content of the call first came to national attention after a whistleblower filed a report expressing concern that Trump had pushed Ukraine to investigate an energy company for which the son of his political rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, sat on the board. At around that time, the Trump administration also withheld military aid from Ukraine, and Ukraine was working to secure a meeting between Zelensky and Trump. Testimony by current and former U.S. government officials in fall 2019 fleshed out a narrative about how officials affiliated with the Trump administration, including his personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani and EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, urged Ukraine to conduct that investigation, as well as one into the debunked theory that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election. The Democrat-led House Judiciary Committee, in outlining its case against the president, said that Trump had betrayed the nation by abusing his high office to enlist a foreign power in corrupting democratic elections, and tried to interfere with Congress' constitutionally protected power to impeach a president. The legislators also argue that Trump's misconduct continued during the impeachment inquiry. They allege that he attempted to interfere with the investigation by ordering executive branch officials not to comply with congressional subpoenas for testimony and documents. According to the articles of impeachment approved by Congress, these charges fall under the high crimes and misdemeanors provision of impeachment power, which, many constitutional experts say, is not necessarily about breaking the law, but rather about having violated the public trust. On February 5, 2020, Trump became the third president in U.S. history to be impeached by the House and then acquitted by the Senate. His acquittal came on a near-party line vote, reinforcing divisions at the end of a bitterly partisan process. The Senate voted 52-48 to acquit Trump on abuse of power and 53-47 to acquit him on obstruction of Congress. Senator Mitt Romney, a Republican from Utah, was the only senator of either party to break ranks, voting to convict Trump on the abuse of power charge. President Richard Nixon. Although President Nixon was not impeached, but he was close to that. In November 1972, Nixon won re-election by what was then the largest margin of victory in the history of U.S. presidential elections. But 5 months earlier, a burglary at Democratic offices in the Watergate Hotel complex had set in motion a chain of events that would end his presidency. In his investigation of the burglaries, Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox uncovered a dirty campaign to attack Nixon's political opponents. Financed by a secret slush fund and directed by Nixon himself. For months, Nixon publicly denied all involvement. But an impeachment inquiry was opened in October 1973, after Nixon fired the top 2 officials in the Justice Department for their refusal to fire Cox. A fight over evidence ensued, including tapes of Nixon's Oval Office conversations. In late July 1974, a third of elected Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee joined Democrats to approve 3 articles of impeachment for obstruction of justice, abuse of power and contempt of Congress. The release of a smoking gun tape a week later, fixing Nixon at the center of the conspiracy, sealed the president's fate. Under pressure from fellow Republicans, Nixon resigned on August 9, 1974, before the full House could vote on impeachment. That was all. We hope that you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe the channel. You can subscribe the channel by clicking the red subscribe button below or by simply clicking the link in the description. Thanks for watching, take care and goodbye.